On today's episode of Locked On Pistons podcast, we'll talk about the matchups against the New York Knicks and the matchups against the Indiana Pacers potentially in the playoffs, and which team would you rather face? We'll talk about that today's episode, Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Ku Khahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Ku Khahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Also, make sure you guys are heading over to LockedOnDaily.com and check out the team's newsletter, Locked On Pistons newsletter. You'll get that daily. Also, link down below for both the Substack and the Playback Room if you want to watch Pistons games with me and my guest here, Matt. That happens almost every single Pistons game. Click those links down below. You can check that out. But today we'll be talking about the matchup versus the New York Knicks in the playoffs potentially, the matchup versus the Pacers in the playoffs potentially, and then also we'll wrap it up with our opinion on which team would you rather play if you're the Detroit Pistons. But Matt, welcome back onto the podcast. You can find him over on Twitter at Griff1on1. Let them know where they can hear you on radio real quick before we get started.
Yeah, 100.9 the Mid, the payoff 6 to 7 on weekdays, and then my podcast 202. We just talked about some of the things we're about to talk about. Dove into the Coach of the Year race. Good little episode after we hadn't had one for a little bit.
All right, definitely make sure you guys go check that out. But let's go ahead and get into today's episode. The first team we're going to start off with, the New York Knicks. Later on, we'll talk about the Pacers matchup. In order for the Pistons to match up against the New York Knicks, they're going to have to fall to 6 because I don't see the Knicks falling to 4 and the Pacers catching them. I don't think that's going to happen. So the only way in which the Pistons could match up against the Knicks is if they fall to 6 and the Milwaukee Bucks jump over them. Then that would be a 3-6 matchup. Now, so far this year, the Pistons won the last 2 matchups at Madison Square Garden. Obviously, Kate played really well. It seems like there's only really 2 teams that the Pistons could match up against. I don't think it's really possible for them to match up against Milwaukee at this point. It's either the New York Knicks or the Pacers. So, Matt, let's talk about the matchup with the Knicks. Let's start with what do you think they would give the Pistons problems with?
Well, I think you start with their talent because they are probably the third most talented team in the Eastern Conference. They have 2 All-Stars, both guys are going to probably comfortably make All-NBA this season. Jalen Brunson has been phenomenal, probably may win Clutch Player of the Year. He's been phenomenal in the playoffs in the past, and obviously Karl-Anthony Towns, he posed a lot of problems offensively. And then on the other side of the ball, they have wings to throw at Cade. Cade has had success in matchups against Mikal and OG individually, but those are still guys that you kind of would think are natural answers. We talked about some of this last time I was on. But the biggest problem to me, I think, is just one, that you're going to be so reliant on one guy to guard Jalen Brunson because, you only have one guy, I think, is really what I'm saying. You only have one guy that can guard Jalen Brunson. That's Ausar Thompson. And if you watch Jalen Brunson play, I know much to the chagrin of most fans that play against the Knicks, he's going to draw fouls. And I think, if you're in a 1-1 series and it's game 3 and Ausar Thompson has 3 fouls in the second quarter, I'm panicking. You know what I mean? I'm panicking because now you got to try to live without your best defender. And Jalen Brunson, he's an isolation-heavy guy. He can just kind of get buckets against anybody who's not capable of stopping him, and they can pile up in a hurry. We've seen him score 50 in a playoff game before. We've seen him average 30 across multiple series before. The fact that they have a killer who's proven in the playoffs and an army of good role players around him is probably where my worries start.
Yeah, I think the Ausar point with Jalen Brunson, we'll talk about this later with Indiana. Don't want to spoil that too much, but I'm not as concerned about that with Indiana, whereas New York, if Ausar gets into foul trouble, like you mentioned, it feels like it's going to be cooked after that because the Pistons are going to be having point of attack defenders of Malik Beasley, THA, Dennis Schroeder, and that's just going to be you're cooked at that point. So I definitely think that's the most concerning thing, but really that's going to translate to just about any series because Ausar is really their only perimeter defender. So if he gets into foul trouble against anyone, that's going to translate, but it obviously is more likely to happen versus a caliber of player like Jalen Brunson, who draws so many free throws and has been such a playoff killer over the last few years. I know we talked about this a tad on the last podcast you were on. My biggest concern maintains, and I know there's ways you can try to scheme around it. I maintain that having Cat on the other end of the floor against Duren is my biggest concern. You saw against the OKC Thunder, they tried starting off with Duren on Chet. It just didn't go well at all. They tried to move him off of Chet, but then Chet started killing him on the boards. They couldn't get any rebounds because now Duren's out in the perimeter guard, and I forget who they were trying to hide him. I don't know if it was Dort or whatever. They tried putting Ausar now on Chet, and that wasn't working out. Try to get Duren off the stretch big. That was a problem they ran into a little bit in the game Cat played, as they tried putting Duren off of Cat, but then Cat just took Tobias down to the post, had some success, and then also on the offensive glass kind of made them pay. That having a stretch big at the level of Cat, who when he says that he's one of the best stretch bigs ever, he's not lying. He really is one of the best shooting bigs we've ever seen. To have that level of guy going against a center that really struggles in space to guard guys. And then obviously, like Duren, the thing is, like, Duren has showed improvement defensively when he's allowed to stay around the paint, and he's been more active as a rim protector. Even if you try to get him off of Cat, how much is he really hanging around the paint? I still think they're just going to get him in a lot of actions if he tries to hide on Josh Hart. And I think they're still going to try to get him out in space, except now you got Cat crashing the glass with like Tobias on him, whatever. That's the biggest concern to me, is that you can kind of get. I honestly think this would be a Stu series. I think it's very likely to see a lot of Stu, and it's good for Stu. But also, I think the Pistons would really like to have a matchup where they can play their starting center a lot of minutes to have him thrive offensively with Cade. So that's my main concern with the Knicks matchup. Cat concerns me a lot with the Duren, him and Duren. But let's get to what would you think is a favorable part of this matchup for the Pistons?
Well, I guess we can stick with the Cat point here. It's that, one of their best players. I mean, you talked about why Duren on Cat is a bad matchup. It is a bad matchup. You're right. But teams feel really comfortable putting guards and wings on Cat, because then they feel like, hey, we can switch in action with Jalen Brunson, maybe not give him as much space to operate. Karl-Anthony Towns, they don't want to post Karl-Anthony Towns up. Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't want to post up. You said it does bring a rebounding problem, and yes, it does. I do wonder, given the fact that, I mean, the Pistons have an Ausar Thompson who's going to juice the rebounding a little bit, without being a big. If you do have an Isaiah Stewart or a Jalen Duren in the game, those guys can guard Josh Hart, because Josh Hart's not a threat on offense. And teams feel comfortable leaving Josh Hart essentially alone. You're right. The Knicks would counter that by putting Josh Hart into action. But at the very least, if that happens, then you don't got to worry about the Karl-Anthony Towns pick and pop, right? You feel a lot better if Josh Hart receives the ball than if Karl-Anthony Towns receives the ball. And it's kind of that simple. As far as how you want to guard them, like what you're considering. I think if you can, I've seen teams funnel the ball to Josh Hart and that kind of work and just make him make decisions off the dribble. The rebounding battle would be an interesting one, because you said things that, work in the Pistons' favor. And as much as the Pistons like to get out in transition, I think a lot of their success has been generated on the glass this year. And I do worry, with Mitchell Robinson coming back, you might not be able to win that battle. But I do wonder, could Jalen Duren, could Isaiah Stewart kind of out-physical a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns throughout a series? It does feel like that's possible. And then another thing that I think is working in our favor is just if Karl-Anthony Towns is playing the 5 and causing those problems on offense, he's giving it up on defense a little bit too, right? He is dreadful in that scenario. They like to play drop. I feel really comfortable about Cade being able to pick and probe against Cat's drop coverage. I worry more about Cade against switchier bigs, guys that are more aggressive out at the level and stuff like that, where his handle kind of feels like it starts to be a little bit more of a problem. But I mean, if the Knicks will probably let Cade walk into a lot of pull-ups, and at that point he's building rhythm, and that's why I think he's played so well against the Knicks throughout the season.
Yeah, I think the area that I would go with to give the Pistons, the part that I like the most about this matchup with the Knicks is what you mentioned earlier, is that while the Knicks seem to have a lot of bodies they can throw at Cade, it hasn't really stopped him in his assault of the New York Knicks, especially at Madison Square Garden. Now, the playoffs are a little different. The lights in the playoffs are obviously a little different, but the lights at Madison Square Garden are obviously different than any other NBA arena as well. So he showed up at MSG and played extremely well. I don't have concerns about Cade offensively against that matchup. against the Knicks. Like you mentioned, I think he is going to walk into a lot of easy mid-range shots. They'll probably give that to him. And he hasn't had too much of a problem against OG, against Mikal Bridges this year when he goes against the New York Knicks. I really, and this is probably going to come up against the Pacers as well when we talk about them in a minute. The Pistons aren't going to have many, like, at least for me, I kind of spoil my answers a little later, but I'll dive further into it later. But I'm not going to come up with many like overall advantages the Pistons have that don't really involve Cade in either of these matchups, because I don't think the Pistons have more talent than either of these teams. The Knicks, I was going to bring up, like you mentioned, their defense being so poor for the majority of the year, but
it's been good lately.
Yeah, I was just about to say the last 15 games, they're a top 7 defense. So it's like OG got healthy and now they're playing better. And it's like,
well, I'll do you better. Since the day Mitchell Robinson came back, they're the number 1 defense in basketball.
Yeah, see, so it's like, is the defense really as bad as we saw before Mitchell Robinson came back, or is it closer to this? So the real positive that I come away with versus the Knicks is that two things, I guess. One, you mentioned it with Cat. He also he's been up and down in the playoffs before, so maybe he has a bad series and he also gets into foul trouble a lot, so maybe he gets himself out. But then secondly, I just think Cade, the way the Knicks are going to have defended him, make me think that he can have a big series against them. And if he has a big series and he's the best player in the series against the Knicks, I think they have a shot to beat them. So that's really where I stand with the Knicks series. But is there anything else you want to say about the Knicks before we move on to the Pacers?
I'll pose a question to you real quick. Do you worry about Cade being in his first playoff series against a coach who's kind of revered for his defensive intellect and like has been in a ton of these series?
No, I'm for sure. I'm concerned about that with Tibbs and with the Pacers when really any matchup. Yeah. I think what teams are going to do, at least this year, I mean, it's really going to be one team unless the Pistons win a playoff series. They're going to double Cade almost. I feel like they're probably going to double Cade almost every single ball screen. They're going to trap him almost every single ball screen.
I feel like the Knicks don't do that as much. I mean, the playoffs are different.
Well, yeah, I feel like this is just how I'm thinking. I feel like Tibbs is going to adjust to. There's no one else in the half court that we have to worry about creating advantages and really scoring for their own. We're going to trap Cade, get the ball in his hands, and see if someone else can beat us. And maybe the Pistons have someone. Maybe Ausar steps up and does it. Maybe Duren steps up and does it. But the Pistons half court offense hasn't been the greatest this year already. And I think that they're going to try to expose the fact that they only have one real shot creator within their half court. And I think that's going to happen in any series. But yeah, definitely. I think Tibbs obviously is one of the best defensive coaches, and he makes some good adjustments defensively. So that's why I expect to happen against the Knicks. But is there anything else before we move on to Indiana?
No. I mean, maybe notable that the Knicks play the shit out of their stuff. I didn't mean to play the hell out of their starters. They play the hell out of their starters. That might be notable as we get down here towards the end of the season. Brunson's coming off a sprained ankle right now. He hasn't been playing. Supposed to be back this weekend. And McBride's out right now, who would play for them in the playoffs. And those are two of their guards, and they don't have depth. That's kind of been one of the stories of the Knicks this season. So
before we move on, Brunson is practicing Friday. Chris Ainge just tweeted that he will be practicing Friday. It sounds like he's going to get some games in before the playoffs come around. But all right. Let's move on to the Indiana Pacers, where we'll talk about where is the negatives in that matchup for the Pistons against the Pacers, and where do they have advantages in their matchup against the Pacers. We'll talk about that coming up. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. If you're feeling that loss of hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Whether I'm at a game or traveling, 5-Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. With longer days, if you love getting outside for a hike or going outside for a run, Tropical Burst is my personal favorite. It should be your go-to for a quick boost. Head to 5hourenergy.com, to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They are everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized with 5-Hour Energy. Now, I got to tell you guys about another one of our sponsors, Wayfair. Spring is here, and that means it's a home project season. Whether you're refreshing a room or tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates like stylish cabinet hardware to major upgrades like new vanities, sinks, or outdoor lighting, Wayfair has quality products for every budget. Their free and fast shipping made it so easy for me. No hauling heavy items from the store. I love the way they have top brands like GE and Moen at great prices. Shopping was seamless, and I found exactly what I need to fit my space and style. Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home with Wayfair. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Thank you guys for being everyday listeners. Check out the description down below to get a link to the Substack and the playback room if you want to watch the Pistons games with me, Matt, and the rest of the Pistons fan base, almost every single Pistons game. Also, check out LockedOnDaily.com to get the Locked On Pistons Daily newsletter. All right, Matt, let's talk about this Pacers matchup. Now, in order for the Pistons to get matched up with the Pacers, they're going to have to hold on to the 5. It would be a 4-5 matchup. The Pacers currently have a 3-game lead on the Pistons. I think getting to the 4 seed is basically out of the question. For me, I don't think they're going to be able to catch them. Indiana's playing well, and the Pistons' schedule is tough to close the season. So I think it's cooked to get to the 4. But if the Pistons can hold on to the 5, they would match up against Indiana in a 4-5 matchup. Let's start with where you're concerned in this matchup. What concerns you most about this matchup with Indiana?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Ku. I've got a few of them.
Go ahead.
We can start with the team-wide one, or we can start with the individual ones on the Pacers. I guess I'll start with the individual ones. I'll say you don't have to think that the Pacers' 2 best players are better than the Knicks' 2 best players. I do think that they're a worse matchup. I think Pascal Siakam is just one of those guys who's kind of unsolvable for what the Pistons roster is right now, right? Like, he's a 6'9", throw it to him, in the mid-post area and let him go to work, like isolation score. The Pistons just can't do anything with him, right? Like, I think he is an easy 28 a game in a series like this. And their other guy, Tyrese Halliburton, he doesn't turn the ball over. He does not turn the ball over. He is mistake-free. He is as smart a basketball player as there is in the league. It'll take a while for him to get the rep of like LeBron and Jokic and those guys. I do think he processes the game on a similar level. I do think that he is a similar level decision maker to those guys. Just past Chris Paul for most 25 and 10 games or 20 and 10 games with no turnovers ever, and he's 25. Like, it's pretty crazy the level of basketball that he's playing. 21 and 11 since the All-Star break, only a turnover per game. Just efficient as can be. Like, the Pistons are probably, I don't know, Ku, with respect to maybe Memphis and Houston, probably the team in the playoffs that's most reliant on transition opportunities, right? Like, the Pacers don't let you have them. They score and they don't turn the ball over. You are not getting out in transition. They're the number 1 team in the league at limiting opponent transition. So it feels like the Pistons' identity is kind of swept from them in that case. The Pacers are the best team in the league against top 10 defenses. So, like, the things that the Pistons hang their hat on, I feel like the Pacers just kind of completely negate to as big a level as you can. I'm not really sure. Like, this is a horrible matchup to me. The Pacers aren't, the strongest 4 seed that a 4 seed has ever been, but I do think like it's about as bad a matchup as you can ask for.
Yeah. So you talk about the transition stuff and the mistake free they play with Hallie. I'm gonna go the route of Pascal Siakam. You kind of mentioned him. Siakam is the most concerning part of this matchup for me with the Pacers. I was talking with Cannon about this at the game that I went to like last week or whatever. And the Pistons, I obviously I had known this beforehand, but kind of just talking with him about kind of just really sparked it even more, is that the Pistons are going to struggle like against the Knicks, and no need to, I'm not trying to spoil the final segment, but like if they were to match up against the Knicks, you're not really concerned as much about Mikal or OG really killing you offensively within the half court. It's not like they're going to get a ton of usage, and it's not like they're going to be trying to hunt their own shots. You don't really have to worry about that. The
Mikal
Pistons,
a little bit.
I'm not too concerned about Mikal.
No, I'm just saying he does it like he is kind of their other guy.
Fair. I'm not the Pacers, and that works for my point is that works for the Pistons a little bit more because they don't have a wing defender. They don't. They have a guy who's really good at the point of attack in Ausar, and he can check Jalen Brunson. Hopefully, he stays out of foul trouble. Against Indiana, you have nobody that's going to be able to check Pascal Siakam, and Pascal has been killing the Pistons on the Pacers for a while now, and it's because of that. They don't have anyone that is that 6'8", 6'9" wing that can get up and check him, that's strong enough to check with them, Everyone knows he's going right every single time. Everyone knows he's spinning to his right every single time. But it doesn't matter because the Pistons don't have the size, the strength to match up with them. Even if you put Ausar on Pascal, Ausar isn't strong enough to match up with Pascal. He probably has a better chance if you push him out towards the perimeter. You can attack the handle a little bit more. But the closer he gets to the rim, the more that matchup favors, the more and more it matches that matchup favors Pascal. And the Pistons just don't have a guy that can really that can stop it unless the Pistons try to. I mean, I've seen them try to put Duren on that matchup, but that doesn't work either because Duren's not good in space. So I'm not even too concerned. And this is no disrespect to Hallie. Hallie isn't the one that really scares me that much in this series. It's Pascal. I think Pascal in a series against the Pistons really could have like a 27-28 per game series against them, like just completely kill him. I don't know who's going to check him. I mean, if you got Ausar on Hallie, I mean, me and Cannon were talking about the matchups a little bit. Cannon thought that you put Cade on Hallie, and then you put Ausar on Pascal, and you had to live with that. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. But like, you're basically picking one or two poisons. If you put Ausar on Hallie, Pascal's going off. If you put Ausar on Siakam, he probably still goes crazy, but that's probably the best chance you have at stopping him. So it's just like that matchup specifically is what really scares me about the Pacers.
I mean, that's two high-paced teams. If you put Cade on the workload on Cade at that point, if he's checking Hallie, and Hallie is moving without the ball all the time too. Like he is kind of like one of those energizer, but he doesn't do anything on defense, so he kind of saves energy there. But he's a constant mover on offense. Like he obviously always has the ball. You're asking Cade to fight through 35, 40 screens. You're asking Cade to some of those being on ball, some of those being off ball. You're asking Cade to be alert 24/7 of where he is. You're asking him to guard the best player who has the ball the most of anybody on the Pacers. So I think like that just in and of itself, even if you feel like he is the best matchup for Halliburton from a personnel perspective, I understand it. I almost feel like, okay, like make Cade, I'd rather Cade check like Siakam, honestly, than Halliburton, just because I do think it's a little bit less wear and tear, though it is a lot more physical. But I think that Cade is also just like a little bit better equipped to guard a Siakam than a Halliburton. But like you said, there's no good matchup. Siakam's still much bigger than Cade. It's tough, man. Siakam's a really good player. The Pacers are really good. It's bad. I mean, we could get into why we're both seemingly picking the Pacers as the worst matchup.
Well, is there any positives? Is there any matchup that you think the Pistons win with that? I think the matchup for me. I feel good about the Pistons scoring against the Pacers. I think they'll be able to get out.
They'll be in half court all the time is my only concern with
Well, who's going to be checking? I'm not really concerned about anyone. They're going to try to check Cade. I think Cade's going to be able to get to his thing and create offense within the half court against the Pacers. I'm not too concerned about the Pacers half court defense versus the Pistons. I think that's the one area that they can survive in is if they just outscore the Pacers. And I will say this real quickly. I know Hallie doesn't turn the ball over, and I know that they do a good job of that. I should have looked these numbers up, honestly. I don't know how I feel like Ausar can maybe turn them all over a little bit more than any other NBA, like most NBA teams could. I think maybe Ausar could try to flip that matchup a little bit. If anyone could, it'd be Ausar. I think the Pistons probably would like that matchup, but still, like you say, it would be tough. I just think the Pacers. I've even on the last episode you were on, I had a somewhat of a belief in the Knicks defense turning around just because of OG getting healthy, which he did over the last month, and then Mitchell coming back. I'm not as much of a believer in the Pacers being able to stop Cade offensively, but that's my one positive.
Look, that's fair, and I do have a couple positives to sprinkle in, but I will argue against that a little bit. Like, I think that Nembhard is as good a matchup for Cade as a guy like on the Knicks, despite being a worse defensive player than OG overall. Like, Nembhard, I don't have the numbers to back this up. I don't have the access to these numbers as far as I know, but like I feel like the Pacers are as high of like a full court press frequency team in the league. I think you'll see McConnell picking up 94 feet. I think you'll see Nembhard picking up 94 feet. I think you'll see Nesmith sprinkled in there doing some of that as well. And Nembhard is just a guy who kind of gets in your shirt a little bit, like he's just a little bit more of a pest, but he is big and strong, right? Like he is a big guard and he is athletic. And I think that he's been like really fundamental to their defense this year, which is like in the top 10 in the league since the All-Star break, I'm pretty sure. So I don't know. I think that Cade's matchup in particular, I feel good about him against like a Miles Turner's drop or something like that, or even if Miles Turner's up at the level. I think that he's taken quite a step back this year. And you're right, like they will be able to score against Pacers. I think Miles Turner is a bit of a pressure point. Siakam is certainly a pressure point at this point in his career. But I do also think that the Pacers might be even a little bit more inclined as opposed to the Knicks at just throwing two on Cade and saying everybody else figure it out.
Well, for what it's worth, these are the Cade's numbers against the Pacers this year. First game, 28, 8-5. Next game, 24, 11-6. He had one bad game, the January 16th game. He had 20 on 33% shooting, but then the following game had 32, 9-5 on 55% shooting. So, I mean, this year he's had relative success against them. And
yeah,
I look, again, we're not trying. I don't want to spoil the entire final segment, but it's the Pacers offensively. And the thing is with the Pistons too, they turn the ball over a lot. And if you turn the ball over against the Pacers,
it could get out. Turn you over a lot.
Yes, and it could get out of hand like that. I mean, it could really just quickly turn over. And before we move on, we can just get to the final segment and just talk about why we'd rather have the Knicks, and we can just get there. But before we get there, the obvious mental aspect has to be into play. Like the Pistons, the last two games against the Pacers have been completely taken out of their element. And we've seen teams start to do that against them. The Nuggets did it with Russell Westbrook. We've seen Stu get ejected. We've even seen, I wrote about this today, we've even seen Cade and Ausar start to get a little bit more vocal and visibly frustrated on the basketball court than we have at any other point. We've seen teams try to get under their skin, and the Pacers have done that the last two matchups, and the Pistons were basically out of the game in the first half because they were just not there mentally. So I think that obviously favors the Pacers as well, because the Pistons do not like that team. They do not like the Pacers at all. The players do not like them, and you got to question, does a young team who's had some issues this year trying to not cross the line and lose their self mentally, will they be able to handle themselves against the Pacers, a team that really tries to get under their skin, talks a lot, and they don't like? That's a bit concerning to me. But coming up, we'll tell you why. I mean, we've kind of laid out the reasoning, but we'll tell you again why we think that the Knicks matchup is much, much more favorable for the Pistons coming up. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone. Before you know it, you're juggling customer calls all day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off 6 months. OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over with no extra charge at OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Check out the newsletter, LockedOnDaily.com. Subscribe, get a Locked On Pistons daily newsletter sent to your email every single day. Head over to the Substack, support me and the film breakdowns that I do, the articles I've been writing down, in-depth analysis. Also, if you want to join me, Matt, and the rest of the Pistons fan base over on Playback and watch the Pistons games, every single Piston game, I'll put that down in the description as well. But all right, Matt. So before we started recording, Matt said he could go 20 minutes with why the Pacers are a terrible matchup. So we didn't hit that, but it's clear as day that I'm picking the Knicks as a more favorable matchup. Matt's also going to pick the Knicks for the most favorable matchup. And before I let Matt go with why, go even further into why he'd rather play the Knicks, I do want to make this clear. Over the last month, behind the scenes, from what I've heard and what I've been told, I have gotten the sense that the Pistons would rather have the matchup against the Knicks. They would rather they feel good about the matchup. If they were to play the Knicks in the playoffs, they feel pretty good about that. So I have that. That's the sense I've gotten over the last month. But it looks like Matt's having a little bit of connection issues. Matt, can you hear us? All right, Matt's gone for a minute. We'll wait till I'll give him some time to get back. But until then, if he doesn't end up getting back, I'll handle the rest of the podcast solo. I'm able to audible like that. I'll go ahead and bring Matt off the screen for a second. All right. So the Pacers and the Knicks, I think it's very clear that you want to go against the Knicks to start off. Oh, Matt's back. Matt, you back?
I'm back.
Okay, go ahead. Well, I was going to try to pull it off the rest solo, but you got back in time. All right. So like I mentioned, I don't know if you heard, but I had heard over the last month, I got the sense over the last month that the Pistons feel good about that matchup against the Knicks. So I just wanted to throw that tidbit out there before we get to why you would rather play the Knicks. But go ahead. You can go ahead with your further argument for why Pistons fans should want the Knicks over the Pacers.
I just think I think that we both know that there's kind of a ceiling on how many points the Pistons are going to be capable of putting up game to game. We know that there is a kind of a dire lack of secondary creation on offense. We know that the half-court offense can bog down at times. We know that we're kind of relying on a guy like inconsistent offensive players. I say we're pretty reliant on a guy who has been just absolutely on fire from three. But if that's not quite happening, right, things can become a struggle. We're relying on a guard who, Cade's been incredible this season, but we're over relying on him. And sometimes that can lead to him, late in the fourth quarter. Maybe it feels like he's running out of gas a bit. Maybe there's a careless turnover here or there. Fantastic season, fantastic player, but probably too much on his plate, frankly. The Knicks are a little bit more similar in that I do think that they can bog down. I do think that the Pistons defense can disrupt the Knicks. I do think that there are legitimate answers to some of the problems that they pose. And I do think that they have legitimate deficiencies, such as just being able to not guard Josh Hart. Whereas I look at the Pacers and I think despite the Pistons being a great defensive team, because of the nature of the way that Halliburton plays, and I've been watching them really closely lately because I do think that will end up being the Pacers or the Pistons matchup. The nature in which he plays, good shots are just going to be so easy to come by for them kind of all the time. You can be, if you're just even a little bit off your mark defensively, if you're cheated into the wrong spot, a half a foot, a full foot, whatever it is, Halliburton's going to get the ball there, and that guy's going to, whoever it may be, if it is Nembhard, if it is a Mathurin, if it is Siakam, they're going to go. They're going to catch and they're going to go, and they've already got an advantage because of where they've received the ball. And Halliburton is kind of a master of that, just being able to even if he's not getting a direct assist every possession, and he gets plenty of those, even if he's not getting a direct assist, he's at least putting his guys, he's at least giving the ball up to guys in a really good spot where their advantage is already, maybe it's not a wide open shot, but they're in an advantageous position. And I think when there's free flowing as they are, when they are able to just kind of do that on the move, there's only so much you can do defensively to disrupt them. Whereas with the Knicks, it's sort of okay, they want to slow it down a little bit more. They want to be really, I think that the Knicks are more deliberate is the way that I would put it. The Knicks are more deliberate. They want to get the ball to Cat in space on the perimeter if he's got a big on him. They obviously want to create catch and shoot opportunities for him, pick and pops, etc. They want to isolate Jalen Brunson. They want to give him space to operate. They feel comfortable with him both in tight spaces, and they'll just kind of empty a side out for him. They're more reliant on their two guys. And I think that the Knicks can go cold, and I'm not sure that the Pacers are really going to go cold. I think that the Pacers are just going to score. I think that it doesn't really matter who you put in front of them. The Pacers are going to score, and I don't know that the Pistons can really match it if we're kind of stuck in the half court all game.
Yeah, I want to read these stats real quick. So since January 4th, which is when Ausar Thompson was brought into the starting lineup, and obviously the Pistons season completely warped. Since January 4th, the Pistons are 6th in the entire NBA, which is honestly pretty damn insane. I'm not going to lie to you. It's pretty crazy. For 42 games, the Pistons have had the 6th best net rating in the NBA. That's more than half the season the Pistons have been the 6th best team in the NBA. That has to count for something. That is pretty damn insane. The problem is that right behind them is Indiana at 7, at 5.1. You want to know where New York falls all the way down to 15th? The New York Knicks are the last team to be a positive net rating before you start getting to the negatives with Atlanta, Sacramento, and Miami. The New York Knicks are just barely a positive team at plus 0.9. So for a good 42 games, the Pistons have been flatly much better than the Knicks. For 42 games, the Pacers have been relatively the same level as the Pistons. And the Pacers, for 42 games, have been kind of at the same level. but then even as of late seem to be surging a little bit ahead of the Pistons. The Pistons and them were right next to each other for the 4th seed. They were fighting for it, and now the Pacers I believe they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're playing extremely well. They've taken a 3-game lead in 4th. They kind of separated themselves, I think, from the Pistons and the Bucks, and as far as this little grouping that was fighting for this positioning. The Pacers seem to be surging and kind of surpassing the Pistons at this point. And yes, while the Knicks have been much better since Mitchell Robinson came back, one, they've been dealing with injury to Jalen Brunson. You don't know how healthy he's going to be in the playoffs. Mitchell Robinson's always an injury concern. Cat is always a concern come playoffs, whether he's going to have a good game. Is he going to foul out? Is he going to be in foul trouble, etc.? And overall, like you mentioned earlier, their pressure points don't change. You can still, there's multiple ways you can take advantage of that Knicks team, and they're heavily reliant on Jalen Brunson. I would have to assume that the Pistons love that matchup with Brunson against Ausar. And obviously, if Ausar gets in foul trouble, you're really cooked. But I think that's really against any team you go against. If Ausar gets in foul trouble, you're cooked, because now you got Beasley, THJ, whoever guarding point of attack. It doesn't matter who you're playing. If Ausar gets in foul trouble, you're done. But the Pacers, the overall point is the Pacers have been a much better team than the Knicks for a long time. They're even playing better as of late. And look, the Pacers, along with their play, I know I mentioned it as just a sidebar earlier. I am really concerned about the Pistons' mental in a matchup against the Pacers. I really think the Pistons could be thrown off their game almost immediately into that series. And I think that plays into the Pacers' hands a lot more than it plays into the trash talking, laughing, all that. I think that plays into the Pacers' hands a lot more than it does a young team like the Pistons. So I much would rather have the Knicks at this point over the Pacers. Look, the Pistons have beaten the Pacers before. They beat them in the in-season tournament. It's not like they can't beat them in a game, but it's just, I mean, Cage went to Madison Square Garden twice and got in the win. And I know they didn't have Mitchell Robinson, but I don't know how much he's changing that. Well, yeah, they didn't have Cat for one of those. I think he played in one. He missed one in the.
He missed one. Did he miss like a hat? I don't know. Like, did he go out of the game in the first one? I feel like.
Yeah, the first one I think he missed after the first quarter because he got his thumb injured, I thought. And then the second one he played in, I thought. If I'm remembering it correctly. But yeah, man, I think it's clear that the Knicks are the matchup.
Yeah, I think one way that this can be boiled down to is, I mean, obviously you don't even consider them the same level of players, but who would have more success against the Pistons straight up, Brunson or Siakam? Siakam's not even the Pacers' best player, you know, like, right. and he might outplay what Brunson would do against us. So, yeah, I'm totally with you. The mental thing is something I think that the added intensity of it would make the series more fun and maybe make it a little bit more volatile, because like you said, I mean, you'd probably assume that the younger team would be the one more likely to kind of be taken out of their game. But I mean, there's a chance that it gets under the Pacers' skin to an extent, right? Like, that's not completely out of the picture. It's still a playoff series. They're a relatively young team too. Despite having gone to the conference finals last year. So I don't know, like that's notable. The Pistons are a lot better rebounding than the Pacers are. The Pacers kind of forego offensive rebounding so that they can commit their resources, quote unquote, to stopping your transition attack. I don't know that benefits the Pistons though. Yeah, it's a tough matchup, man. I like pointing out the net rating lately is important because like it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the Pistons have been playing on like a real playoff team level for a while. It isn't just like kind of scrapping their way into the 6th seed like it felt like early in the season. Like this has been like a solidified, true, real deal playoff performing team as of late.
And in the last 15 games, you got the Pistons 7th in net rating, the Pacers 8th. So the Pistons and Pacers have really just been right there on that same level for really since January. They've been the same level of team.
Yeah.
New York, the last 15 games, still all the way down at, or well, not all the way down, but farther down than both those teams at 12th in net rating. So I don't really see the argument for wanting the Pacers more outside of, I do, like you mentioned, I do believe it would be a much more entertaining series. I think NBA fans would love the series against the Pacers. I think there would be a lot of trash talk. There'd be a lot of technicals. There'd be a lot of physicality. It'd probably be a lot of trash talk in post-game pressers, like in between games. It would be a really
JB's
fun
getting
series.
bars off in one of these games.
Yes. It would be a really fun
You're right.
series,
that factor almost makes me still want the Pacers more, just because I feel like those games would mean more. Those games would feel more. You'd kind of ride the emotional roller coaster even more in the Pacers games. Obviously, all the Pistons fans are going to be, pretty up and down in whatever playoff series that they play in. But I do think it feels like there's more skin in the game. And I mean, it could be the start. Like, the Pacers are a young team. We're a young team. We both got, all NBA level guards that are kind of similar age, both big guards. So that's a natural comparison point. Beef Stew and Miles Turner seem to hate each other. Benedict Mathurin and Jaden Ivey seem to hate each other. Like, this is very clearly can be like a budding rivalry for a lot of years to come, frankly. So I think that alone maybe makes me want to say, okay, I don't think that the Pistons have as good of a chance of beating the Pacers as they do the Knicks, but they're an underdog in either series. Maybe it'd just be more fun to watch a Pacers series.
All right, so before we wrap up the podcast, because we went for a little bit, but before we wrap it up, I do want to ask you this. So obviously you don't want to see the Pacers. If the Pistons match up against the Knicks, what do you put the percentage chance they pull out of that series with a win?
I would put I think the Pistons would be like plus 220 to win the series. So what are the relative odds? I don't know, what is that, like 30% or something like that?
Oh yeah, I was just about to say I would put.
It might be bad math. It's tough. They'd be underdogs for a reason, but I do think hey, we beat them throughout the regular season. We talked about why the matchup was like that. I think if Jalen Duren shows up to play in that series and there isn't a big Karl-Anthony Towns problem and Jalen Duren can kind of just patrol the paint on Josh Hart, they have a chance to win that series. The Knicks offense could totally bog down in that situation, and then the Pistons are running.
Yeah, I got them at 30% chance to beat the Knicks, which I think is a pretty good chance. I think it's a pretty good chance to beat them. But we'll see. We're really close to the playoffs. About 2 weeks away, week and a half, 2 weeks away from the playoffs. It's going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. Again, before we wrap up, I just want to say I've said this multiple times over the last few episodes. I'm going to continue saying it. Everyone just needs to enjoy the rest of the season, no matter what happens. No one expected the Pistons to be the 6th seed. This is for 42 games of a season to be a legit top 6 NBA basketball team. That's absurd. That's crazy. And I'm sure a lot of people would argue that if Ausar was full strength from the get-go, we might be talking about them as the 4th seed. We might be talking about them higher, because the season really flipped as soon as Ausar was put in the starting lineup and was able to help them defensively. So be happy with this season. This has been a spectacular season. No matter how it goes, be happy about how this has went, and hopefully they get a playoff series win. At the very least, I think they're definitely going to end the playoff win drought. I think that's going to happen. So just enjoy
years?
The rest of this. What do you say?
Is it 17 years?
Yeah, going all the way back to 2008. Yep. It's crazy.
I will say, I do want to say, I really hope I'm wrong. I hope that the Pistons can win it. I would want nothing more than to be unbelievably wrong, egg on my face about this.
Me as well, but we'll see what happens. All right. Thank you, Matt, for coming on. You guys can find him over on Twitter at Griff101. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Haven't ready? Head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace out, everybody.